Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Terror Neighbors Make Our Lives Hell. Return the favor by getting them raided. As we found out that we'd be expecting, not one but two kids, we knew we had to move to a real house with more space. At the time we were still living in a one-bedroom studio one up from the ground floor. With its only entrance being a metal fire escape, stairs. Not ideal for a pregnant woman, let alone to live with two small babies. So, we found a privately leased house that was newly renovated and had all the room and a large garden we were looking for. Signed the lease and immediately collected the keys. As the owner drove off, the woman next door comes up to me, immediately demanding we not make noise before noon as her boyfriend works nights and sleeps in and a whole bunch of other do's and don'ts. So right off the bat knew, trouble incoming. As the house was fully renovated and not much had to be done, we were like, don't poke the bear, we'll do the things that make noise after noon. We moved in after 2 weeks and the whole street was warm and welcoming. My wife was almost due giving birth to my twin daughters and some offer help with anything we needed, real kind people. They also told us about our neighbors. Nobody liked them, he was a big bully and got into arguments with everybody. Also were known as radio pirates, as in illegal broadcasting on radio with all Dutch bangers. This music is just terror on your ears and possibly used on terrorists on black sites, which went alongside them partying Thursday to Sunday till 5 in the morning. Loud music, constant yelling, always drunken etc. Really something to look forward to when moving in, certainly with 2 babies on the way. The partying began immediately, full blast. Real classy for someone demanding to be quiet when douchebag needs his beauty sleep. Then one day my Phil came to put new grass in. He has his trailer parked at the back of our houses, which is public space. Not according to him though. Know that exact spot where the trailer, full with grass sods, quite heavy stuff, was parked was his spot and we had to move the trailer. Not going to happen as I was not planning to walk all the way around the house with the sods. He gets angry right away and demanded me to move it. I told him to go fuck himself. I was done with him already then and there. I'm also a ginger, so besides having no soul I do have a temper which is always in check until you provoke me repeatedly. Anyone who knows me will tell you that you really had to make an effort for that to happen. We went on working and end of day comes when my Phil wants to leave. Hooks up the trailer and bam, there was douchebag, telling him off, yelling it's his spot and he better does not do this again or else. Mess with me all you want, I can handle it, but what you don't do is threaten my family. I ran outside and told him in no uncertain terms to back off or he'll be the sorry one. Total bluff on my side. Yes, I have that temper, but I'm not impressively built and have no hidden fighting skills. I do fight dirty. He backs off, Phil leaves and I go inside where I find my wife crying. She got scared of him maybe doing something to her father and or me, and this is something we don't need right now. Combined with hormones from being pregnant, and you can paint that picture. So I'm even more upset, but had to promise not to act on anything. I won't, dear, not yet anyway. Time went on without any real incident and then came the time my wife goes into labor. Didn't go smooth and ended up having to deliver with C-section, or whatever it's called, because daughter 2 was almost strangled by the umbilical cord. We had to stay 3 nights, excruciating nights due to a lot of things. Finally we get to go home. Family had put a giant sign in our front yard welcoming the babies. The sign was already up for a few days prior to coming home, so our friendly neighbors definitely knew about it. But did they give a flying duck? No, they did not. From the first night on they started to party and broad blasted their terror music. They started at noon and continued to until 5 or 6 in the morning. Classy. They also kept going for days, so it wasn't just Thursday to Sunday, it was all week long and the next. So we were broken, hardly slept. One of our daughters suffered from heavy cramps combined with all the noise and her parents at the end of their wits, so she cried a lot. And then I just had it. I researched some things on radio pirates. The laws and regulations and on his large, 5 MTR plus antenna in his backyard, which was illegal in itself, but he used it to illegally broadcast on radio, which meant he had a lot of equipment to do so, which was even more illegal and can even get you jailed. But at the very least they could seize it all and fine him big time. In the 10 to 45K area. Now, I did not immediately turn him in, but instead were looking for another house to lease first. This because I figured it wouldn't sit well with him and having a wife and 2 babies in the house alone during the day because I had to go to work. I hear you guys thinking, why not involve the police? Well, they are utterly useless in cases like this. We called once and what they did disturbs me to this day. They rang at their doorbell and immediately started off by saying we called them about noise complaints. Yes, you read that right. No protection or whatsoever, just blatantly told them we were the reason they're there, told them to keep it down, and that was it. They didn't even follow up with us or anything. As you can guess, douchebag now was even more upset and told me the next day, or yelled over the fence that separates our backyards, that I really should not do that again, a threat yet again of which I told the police. I didn't report it the first time as I chalked that up to alpha male and heat of the moment. But without witnesses to corroborate, nothing could be done yet again. Some days later I walked out the front door and he just stepped out of his car. Came up to me demanding I cut back some of our ivy that grew on our side of the fence because it tangled in with his big antenna. He would be gone for some hours and I could come into his garden to cut back the ivy that grew through on their side. And then a light bulb went on above my head. I told him politely that I would do that immediately. Why? Because that gave me the opportunity to find out the make and model of this antenna to ascertain its signal strength, where the cables go exactly and what kind of cables they were. Again, to know the signal strength it handled. Also, it gave me a good view on the equipment he had, through the window, so I could snap some photographs of it. This was the icing on the cake. Because in the meantime we did manage to find a new home and already had signed the lease, so we would be gone in 2 weeks. Luckily we only had to paint some walls for the girls' room and furthermore just pack up our things and move them to the other house. So after I trimmed the ivy and collected my evidence, I went online that night to find out the proper channels to report a broadcast pirate and which entity was tasked with catching said pirate. Turned out I had to call the telecom agency but also the police. Wasn't too happy with the latter, but I remembered I have a nephew that works for the police. Officially his area was immigration, but knew enough colleagues that could help us and we could trust not to confront them again, saying I was the one that sent them. That was extremely important for our safety when doing what I was doing. So I gave both the agency and the police all evidence I collected, pointed them to the frequencies he pirated so they could listen in. Then they started a neighborhood investigation, which wasn't really necessary, but this was to cover our butts to make it look like he got caught, by accident, because they had an active investigation in our area. You never know what he can learn from legal documents and such. We asked them to wait with the raid. Yes, they raid pirates' houses, preferably in the early hours of the day because of his beauty sleep rendering him incapable of fleeing or hide evidence, etc. We moved 2 weeks later and they raided him 2 days after we moved. All of his equipment, computers, radios, cell phones and his car were seized. He left in cuffs. His wife, girlfriend did too, for making a big scene and tried to interfere. All of which was live reported to me by one of my ex-neighbors who were equally ecstatic about this. It turned out, this wasn't the first time he got caught but his third time. His car had no insurance on it and his MOT failed. This would normally have no big consequence because he didn't drive it while raided, but they had the guy surveilled on for a week and that definitely meant he was seen driving it while not having insurance and valid MOT. He was fined somewhere around 30k euros, went to jail for 12 weeks and everything seized was destroyed except the car. His girlfriend had to do 40-some hours community service. They had to sell the house, which made very happy neighbors as they too were over and done with them. Like I said, I do fight, but very dirty. You have to really make an effort for me to get to that point. They did and suffered. Over a year later, when shopping groceries, I encountered them. With the foulest of looks. If looks could kill, I'd be a smoldering heap of ash. But nothing more than that. Next one is titled, Hard Local Lads vs Hotel Owner's Husband. This happened to a friend of a friend. All the names have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty. There's this lady, Let's call her Lucy, who runs a hotel in an undisclosed seaside town in the UK. One Friday night she is woken up at 1 a.m. by the sound of breaking glass, and goes downstairs to find the window in the front room broken and a brick on the floor in the middle of the room. She calls the police, who arrive 20 minutes later and are pretty useless. Sorry, madam, but there's not much we can do. The following night, Saturday, a brick is thrown at the door. In fact, this carries on for a couple of weeks, between midnight to 2 a.m. on Friday and Saturday nights. Obviously, she's getting pretty fed up with it, and on the third Friday, she waits up, and goes outside to confront whoever is doing it. It turns out it is 4 local lads who think they are hard, and they scare her, saying things like, "What the duck are you gonna do about it, witch?" Sending her running inside for safety, as they chase her and kick the door. Well, she's terrified. She calls the police. By the time they arrive, the lads have long gone, and her brief description of them isn't enough. After the police have left, she calls her husband, who I'll call Mike, who was on operations in, possibly, Afghanistan. She explains the times and frequency of what's happening and how many lads were involved. He asks her a load more questions, which she dutifully answers. Saturday night arrives, and at around 11 p.m. she heard a tapping noise at the window. She opens the curtains, and sees her husband, Mike, in full camouflage gear. She opens the window and he tells her he'd jumped on a C-130 back to the UK immediately after her call. He then tells her not to stay up for these lads, but to go to bed as normal, and if she hears any bangs or crashes, to call the police. She goes to bed. About 2 hours later these lads come up the road, drinking beer and throwing stones. One hits the front of the hotel, and suddenly the lad at the front is confronted by a Royal Marine Commando in full battle gear. It's Mike, and, yes, he is a Royal Marine Commando. Mike politely asks the lads to kindly duck off and not come back, and the lad at the front immediately attacks, big mistake. While his friends rally to attack behind him, only to discover that there were 3 other Royal Marine Commandos hiding nearby, and they are all individually handled. Within 30 seconds, the 4 lads had been thoroughly beaten. Mike then says to the leader, "I won't give you the opportunity to reconsider your actions next time this happens." Which is possibly the best thinly veiled threat to kill I've ever heard. Then Mike and his team go back to their airfield and catch another C-130 back to their base. When the police arrived, the Marines had long gone, but they found 4 lads with multiple broken ribs, arms and legs. Later reports indicated that they were in hospital for between 3 and 9 months recovering from their injuries, and weren't really sure who had done it. The senior police officer interviews Lucy, as he knew that her husband was military, but she said he was on OPS in the Middle East. The officer gets his contacts in the military, and is ultimately able to speak to Mike's commanding officer, who tells him, "Sorry, Mike hasn't been off the base in 10 weeks, edit." The base commander genuinely didn't know that Mike and his team had left the base at all, because they were back for roll call or whatever they call it, so Mike is just really sneaky. They knew he'd done it, but there was no evidence. Also, the 4 lads never troubled Lucy again. Next one is titled, "Lady, I Got Nothing But Time." So, I'm not sure how this will go, but I guess this is sorta petty revenge. I'm sure this mootly billion-dollar company issue isn't even a rounding error on their P&L statements. Some years ago I tore my knee up real good, in fact it's still not good. But it's better. I wasn't worried though. I had a good job, with good health insurance. I went to my doctor. My doctor sent me to a specialist who told me I needed surgery. We coordinated everything with my insurance company. My insurance company approved the surgery, costs, etc. all golden, right? Well, a few weeks after my surgery I get a bill from anesthesiologist. Turns out a week or so before my surgery his agreement with my insurance company expired and he didn't renew it or something. What does this mean for me? It meant that he didn't get paid his fee, and that fee apparently was $4,000. So I call my insurance company and I explain, "Hey, you didn't pay my anesthesiologist. You approved the surgery, you need to pay him." They opened up a case. About a week later I get told, "Your anesthesiologist is out of network, therefore his cost is not covered by us." So I call up my anesthesiologist to try and see if they will waive the cost. Turns out, they won't. They did offer me a discount if I paid cash. I told them no. So I called my insurance company up and I told them they need to pay my anesthesiologist. They said they already made a decision, and they won't. Now I know for a fact those insurance companies have a customer relations software and they track my calls, they put in notes on what was said, and they also record my calls. So I told the rep on the phone that I am going to call every single day, until they change their mind. He said he's sorry but there's nothing he can do. 9 calls later, a rep sees how many times I've called. She goes, "You've been calling every single day?" I go, "Yay." She goes, "That takes a lot of time, doesn't it?" I go, "I'm on disability, I got nothing but time." She said she understands, but unfortunately they still aren't going to pay my anesthesiologist. My theory is there was a disagreement between my anesthesiologist and my insurance company and I was caught in the middle. 4 days later, 4 more phone calls. A rep asks me how many times I'm going to keep calling. I tell them I'm going to keep calling until I get the answer I want. Honestly, by this point it had become a joke among my friends. I would sit at home, smoke my weed, watch my daytime TV talk shows as I left my phone on speaker as I was waiting to get through to a rep. I had unlimited minutes with my phone plan. 7 more business days, 7 more calls. I finally get a rep who notices my log history and comments that he's never seen anyone call this much over the same issue and get denied every single time. He said he's going to refer me to a higher level to try and resolve my issue. This wouldn't have been the first time it happened. 3 days later, I'm about to make my 3rd call when my phone rings. It's a higher level manager who deals with special claims. And he gives them this speech about how due to contractual obligations they are unable to pay my anesthesiologist. I ask him, "How much of your employees' time do you think has been spent telling me no?" He pauses for a moment, and goes, "Well, you've been calling us every day for several weeks." I go, "Yes, and how much of your employee time do you think has been spent telling me no?" He goes, "What's your point?" I go, "Your company has probably spent more money telling me no than it would have cost them had they just paid my anesthesiologist," to which he responds, "That's unfortunately the way it is and he has very little power to change it." To which I said, "That's fine, I'm going to keep on calling every single day and putting in a new case, every single day." To which he said, "That's not going to change anything," to which I said, "Again, that's fine, I'm going to keep calling." I keep calling, 5 more days. When I get another call from my insurance company, it's the same gentleman who told me no. Honestly, by this point the reps I was calling were really familiar with me. One rep even commented that he's never seen as many calls logged in such a short period of time. After further consideration, we have decided that we will authorize the payment to the anesthesiologist, to which I asked, "And when will he get his payment?" To which they said, "A couple business days," to which I said, "That's fine, I'm going to call him and confirm he got his payment." To which the guy laughed and said, "I'm sure you will." Oh, what makes this petty? Honestly, the anesthesiologist had offered to settle the bill with me for half, and I had the money to pay him, but it was a matter of principle to me. Welcome to America, the land of the free, just not free healthcare. Last one is titled, Freeloader Student Gets Gravy Train Cut Off. This wasn't a particularly grand revenge, but it still made me feel warm and fuzzy inside. This happened at university a couple months ago. The particular class was one that had periodic tests in tutorial that counted towards your grade, but you worked in groups of 2 or 3 to complete them. So far I had been doing pretty well in this class and did a reasonable amount of study before the tests, as they were closed book and worth a significant portion of our grade. Everyone who is in this tutorial usually sits in similar spots every week, and I usually was beside this one guy who was notoriously useless when it came to contributing to anything. He made no attempt to hide his uselessness and would often proudly announce how little, 0, study he had done for tests. He did, however, know that I did prepare, so would always make himself a part of my group when it came to tests so he would get the good mark without having to contribute anything. While at first I didn't really give a duck, it slowly started getting on my nerves until one day in lecture before the tutorial he would not shut the duck up about how little he had done to prepare for the test. So after lecture I literally ran to tutorial to get there before him and quickly formed a group of 3 with whoever was already there. When he arrived, he tried his best to weasel his way into our group, saying we could just do a group of 4 until the TA shut him down and paired him with the other most useless kid in the class. The way his face fell, and he babbled as he was trying to get out of the situation, and when he realized he was going to fail, was so delicious. It wasn't much of a win, but I still smile thinking about it today. Thanks for listening.